sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
I am. I'm the every blade of grass, every grain of sand. I'm all 8 billion people present day. I'm all the people in the past and all the people in the future. I'm all sentient life form. I'm this galaxy. I'm all time and space, and I'm in all multi-dimensions of time and space. I'm the billions and trillions of galaxies and stars. I am beyond what I could ever humanly articulate or imagine. I am. I am you. I am me. I am we. I am. What an extraordinary thing to know that this I am is pure, unconditional, unlimited love all of the time. All space, all time, and all creation beyond what we could even imagine. I am. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. Who had a great Valentine's Day yesterday? Few people had some great, some okay, some eh. Valentine's Day is such an interesting holiday. So Valentine's Day comes from, there was back in the earth-based spiritual traditions, it began around this time of year that they would have mating rituals for people to come together to mate with one another. And so there was this, it had a name, I can't remember what it was at this time of year, and then the Christian church, the Catholic Church came and said, okay, well, how can we integrate this into our traditions? And I don't think integration's a bad thing. So they picked Saint Valentine, and then there's a lot of confusion about who they're actually talking about. So it wasn't a clear demarcation, but so this Saint Valentine was then combined with this ritual of mating. So we have, saints aren't about romantic love, but Saint Valentine's became about romantic love and in February. So, and then this idea started, so in the Middle Ages, it was practiced, and again, it was about coming together, romantic love, especially in the early years, young early love. And really in the 1900s, it sort of proliferated into a much bigger holiday beyond just the romantic love of young people. It's a confusing holiday because it's about love, but it's about a very tiny, specific type of love. And unless you're experiencing that very tiny, I always think Valentine's Day and romantic comedies are sort of all together. And it's that time where you first meet someone and you're just like madly in love and you're blind. You fall, everyone is in love. Because you're in love, everybody's in love, and all you do is just see love everywhere you go, and it's beautiful. And we know that love. And what generally they say is that romantic love is a stage, but it's not the whole story. It's the beginning stage. It's what brings us together. And you can have romantic love throughout a relationship if you really work at it. But that relationship is also going to start maturing in love. That love has to mature to get deeper and deeper. So when we think about, well, so one of the things, to be clear, so here's just the setup for me is a little bit of a challenge with a lot of these holidays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day. There's the ideal, and then there's the actual, and then the suffering is the gap in between. So even though this holiday is meant to bring lots of flowering love, and it does for some people, it also brings a lot of suffering because we're like, well, I'm not there. I'm not madly in love, or I'm not feeling this romantic love. Now, I just saw a video this morning with Ryan Gosling. I'm always looking up titles, just to see what's out there. And Ryan Gosling had a little clip, and he called a male friend yesterday on video, and he recorded it. And he said, I'm calling to wish you happy Palsentine Day. He said, it's for pals, where pals, bros, can express love to one another. And I'm like, that's cool. So, people are opening up. But the idea is to really move it beyond just that one very small, tiny idea of love. So it's all inclusive of everybody. And so we're going to be talking about today that wonderful relationship of divine love. And that divine love is the I am. But part of that I am is each of us. So even as I was saying, I am all of these things, I can't walk through the world being all of that. I wouldn't function. This is why a lot of times they say people go off. Because if I'm aware of the I am of all time, all creation, all time dimensions, and I can't function in this world. So the I am I think specifically and intentionally lives its life as each one of us. And every one of us is essential to live from that I am source, but in our own individual way. So I think one of the great examples of how important it is that we all live our own divine self is, I like sports because it's so clear. I read a book years ago by Phil Jackson, who was the coach of the Bulls, later on the Lakers. But Michael Jordan was a great player, but they had never won a championship. And then when Phil Jackson joined on, he first gave them all Zen mind, beginner mind. But he then was watching how they were playing, and he said what he was noticing was all the players would kind of stop to watch Michael Jordan. Like, this guy's amazing. And they saw his brilliance, so they sort of withdrew a little bit and let his brilliance shine. And he said, we'll never win a championship this way. That every one of you are brilliant and are essential for this team, and you have to stop watching what Michael Jordan is doing and play your brilliant role. And that's the culture he started to change, and he actually very consciously brought in this concept of oneness. We are one team. We are not one person. We are one team. And each and every individual of this team is essential. And as he started to bring in and pull out from every person their brilliance, as we know, the Bulls won 3 world championships. And their players became very famous as well as Michael Jordan. It wasn't just Michael Jordan, it was these other players, because their brilliance started to shine. So this love that we see with Valentine's Day I started with the I am, and that I am is always wonderful, but there's an I-thou relationship that I want to talk about today. Because this I-thou relationship is about, there is this vast infinite I am, but it's also the I of our individual self. And so the I of us is in relationship with the I am, and so we're just going to call the I am the thou. It's not separation, because it's inside of me too. The reason why I go like this is not because it's out there, and it's in here too, but sometimes we can't feel the vastness of all the universes and galaxies inside, because then I keep pointing at myself, and that gets confusing. So it's to say, that I am, the infinite cosmos, is within me, but also I am within it, the small self. And so there's this holy and sacred relationship, and I believe we all know, maybe not everyone, there's a joy in sharing, having connection, not just being all about me. So there's always theories about why we have this world, and one of the theories is that the I am just got lonely and wanted to have, be able to play with itself. So we need to recognize, we want to recognize that part of our journey is not just about being the I am, which can be a little bit illusionary, because again, unless we're living in that vastness of the infinite, we're still a small, limited, tiny, limited perception base, station, and to really become aware of who we are in relationship to the I am. And that this is a relationship of love. This is a relationship of love that is so far beyond any other type of love that we'll ever experience, because it sees and knows us far beyond our one human incarnation. It knows us every subconscious as well as conscious thought, every experience, feeling. It knows everything about us, this lifetime, every minutiae detail. It knows where in my view, it has a sense of where we are going. And it certainly knew who we were before we were born. I don't think we just came out of nothingness. I don't think we're born into this world as blank slates, most of us. And I'm using human beings, there's animals, plants, there's so many, of course, as soon as you get into the vastness. So our incredible journey is to be in relationship to this. And what do we know about relationships? When we're in relationship with somebody, what do we want? We want to feel heard. We want to feel seen. Isn't that right? It's not much of a relationship if you're like relating to this thing and you're just got like a blank wall staring back at you. There's a give and take in that relationship. So how do we know when we're heard? Well, sometimes when we're heard, we're just heard. We just feel it. We feel like there's a presence there and it's hearing us. But sometimes we get responses, and this is the part that sort of can be confusing. Well, here's what I want to say. There's also a belief, and this is the part I'm just sort of playing with today. So love is absolute. It's unchanging. In the old idea, love was up there in the sky. It was mercurial. And sometimes it was loving. Sometimes it was angry. Sometimes it was judgmental. So we come along to principle. There's a principle that love is always, it's absolute, it's constant, and it's unchanging. It's always there. It's the source of all of our life. We can count on it. We can count that it's always there. It does not matter what we say, do, or think, that love is there. It's solid, unchanging, which is extraordinarily healing. And there's another correlation to that, and that's the one I want to look at today, which is, and it's always talking to us. And I've said that myself from this stage. But I've heard it from other people too, and I've always been sort of, it's always. So here's it's always speaking to us, and we have to hear it. That if we're not hearing Spirit, it's because we're not listening. And so what I want to go a little bit more in the nuance here. That yes, this love is absolute, unchanging, perfect, whole, and complete, and loves itself as all creation all of the time. However, I do think that sometimes the communication between ourselves and this love is not always consistent, and it's not always our fault. Because that's what it's almost like. Well, you would hear it if you were paying attention, if you were paying closer attention, and that might be part of the answer. And I've had to think about this because there are times where I've heard from Spirit, and I don't know why I've heard in that particular case and I don't hear it at other times. So as an example, I remember walking down the hallway, and I was working at the psychiatric hospital, and I had this thought in my head. I'd really like to go further in this work. I wonder if I should go the line of psychology and get my master's in psychology, or should I go in the line of spiritual direction? And that's all I remember. I just remember having that question in my head. And then very soon after that, I have the whole vision about, with Yogananda and Shunryu Suzuki, you need to be a minister. And I thought, they were listening. There were presences listening to what I was thinking. I was asking, and I was just sort of asking it. But there was an intensity, because the fact I even remember asking the question, how many questions do we ask in a day? How many things do we think in a day? And yet I can remember very pointedly thinking that question and then getting an answer. But it was very disturbing. It can also be disturbing. It's like when I ask questions and I don't get answers. Because I'm like, well, I know you can do it. Like, if you wanted to, you could show up in my dreams. You could do this. Why aren't you doing that? So there's this little exploration of why this presence sort of plays hide and seek with us. And we don't talk about that much in New Thought. We just have these very absolute principles. And I think it's a little more complex than that. One of the ways we often hear Spirit is when we get to rock bottom of something, whether it's rock bottom with something happening in our life, emotionally, mentally, physically. So it can be sort of an emotional devastation. You can't take it anymore. And in that moment of total surrender, something opens up. You see something that you didn't see before. And so we hear it a lot with addiction, that first power, I have no power over whatever that addiction is. It's total surrender. You hit rock bottom. But there's also other ways. I think of Joseph Chilton Pierce, who worked with the developing fetus in children and then growing up in children. And he was very interested in this idea of play, why all children in all cultures of all time, consistently, play is so big in child development. And he was researching and reading everything that's been written, and he said, I had all my papers, and I was just going over it and over it, and I just couldn't get, why would God, he said, everything in biology has a purpose. Why is play so important? And finally, after just exhausting himself, and this is a typical story of, he just quit. He's just like, forget it. I just can't, I've done it, I've done all research, can't see it. And in that moment of total surrender, he shot out into the universe, and suddenly he's the ball. And he said, Spirit was playing with me across the universe, and I'm being thrown back and forth. And it was pure play and delight. And suddenly the awareness of what play was just all came and downloaded into his experience. Could he have heard that experience before he just gave up? And that's something we ask ourselves, why aren't I hearing it? Well, we hear, maybe I'm not ready. So there's a practice of just surrendering all the time, living a life of surrender. I surrender, and you can, I know so I'll just use, because I just find him incredibly inspiring, was Elder Porphyos, who has a typical Christian prayer, which is, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. So he just says that over and over, which is the constant surrender. Have mercy, have mercy, have mercy. And part of that reason is just to stay open and available. Of myself, I can do nothing. I'm just in constant state of surrender and openness. But also, he's engaging. He said, these ideas would come to him and he would just imagine them. I wonder what would that be? And he'd go through a whole story and he said, and then one time he thought, I wonder what it would be like to be a chaplain. And he was thinking about that. And then he had a health issue, had to leave his monastery, went into the big city, and he became a chaplain for 33 years. While he was a chaplain, he went to medical classes. He would just sit in the back because he wanted to learn about the human body. He rebuilt an old monastery and learned irrigation system and became a completely self-sustaining. This is all stuff he was initiating. So it's kind of this both surrendering and listening to this divine thou, opening our heart, and at the same time being a vehicle. Why? Because we are all meant to be individualized. Think of being in relationship with someone. Do you want to be in a relationship with someone who just goes, yes, yes, whatever you want, I have no opinion, yes. Now you want to be in a relationship with someone who's full and rich and brings their whole self to them. We are all individualized as the I am because we have each a very important role to play. Just like those players watching Michael Jordan, that is not a team. They each had to embody who they are. And so it is on us to, on the one hand, completely, so that's part of this I thou. If I just do, I'm surrendered, and I don't take initiation, I can't show up to this loving relationship, this divine, holy, and sacred communion as an individualized expression. I remember one spiritual teacher saying, if you just give up everything, but you haven't ever developed yourself, you're actually not giving up anything. You have to develop yourself. At the same time, it's this paradox of both developing and following your imagination, following your dreams, following this growth within you, and at the same time surrendering. It's an extraordinary life, this life of divine love. If a parent has a child, they want that child to grow. They want that child to find their own voice. When people say, oh, he's a mini-me, that's sort of like, no, they're their own person. Yes, they have the DNA of the parents. Yes, they have the imprint of the parenting, whoever was parenting them. But ultimately, they have to individuate. They have to find their own voice. With the stew that was given to them, from that stew, they have to choose. They have to individuate. We have to individuate. We have to say what we want. and surrender and open to the infinite I am. And this is what leads to this extraordinary communion of our small self and our infinite self, our small self and this divine one. There becomes a relationship of back and forth, of communion, of exploring, and you're not afraid to explore because you're going to upset this great divine being. No, I'm going to be honest and share and be naked and tell all the things that I am scared about and afraid about and the things that I want and I think that I need, but maybe I don't need. And I'm listening at the same time because we do get responses. So we get sometimes responses that are extraordinary visions. Sometimes we get little things whispered into our ear. But then we have this developing intuition. And it's not an intuition like, there's an undeveloped intuition, but as you're doing this work, as you're in this holy communion all the time, you're in relationship all the time with the divine. So you're both creating and listening. You're surrendering and participating. It's constant, and it's day in and day out. And then you'll start getting these intuitions that are not, there isn't a whisper in your ear. There isn't a great vision. I mean, there can be that too. It's not either or. Last week we were talking about the messages, but now there's just this inner knowing. Oh, I hear you. Yeah, I got that. And you might not actually be hearing anything, but you know that you know that you know, because you know when you're in a relationship with someone and it's so intimate that you know where the other person is or what they're thinking, and you don't have to have long conversations about it because you're like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, got it. I'm with you. I feel you. I feel you. I know you. I'm intimate with you. I remember Mary Amanda Morrissey, someone asked her, how do you know when it's God and your own or something else? And she said, well, you know when your parent calls you, let's say you have a healthy, happy relationship with your mom, and your mom calls, and you don't have to go, is this you, Mom? You know it instantly. Mom. Or it doesn't matter what your relationship is with, you know. Because you have that intimacy. That's this holy and sacred communion. This is this incredibly mature love that starts to develop because we're mature, because we're growing into our own becoming, and we're sharing that with the divine, and the divine is totally engaged because we are the center of its universe. Each and every one of us is the center of the universe where there is no circumference. I'm sure many of you have heard that. I believe St. Augustine said it originally, that each of us are the center of divine love where there is no circumference. Every one of us. We are passionately loved about. Every detail of our life is cared about. And then we're participating, and the divine is participating, and there's such a sacred joy and love beyond anything we could ever imagine. That's what this divine union relationship is. And then there's those times, and hopefully they don't happen often, where we go through the dark night. Now I want to be clear, the dark night is not about bad things happening, because you can be in very difficult situation for a month, for a year, for multiple years, but the divine presence is always there, and you can continue to commune with the divine presence even when your circumstances are difficult. That relationship, that vehicle is still flowing. You're still feeling that divine connection regardless of the circumstances you're in. But then there's those times where there's no flow. And perhaps you've been in a relationship where that period happens, where it just sort of dries up. I remember a woman named Judith Wright was talking about that with her relationship with her husband. It was so rich and full, and then it just went through this dry period. And she said, I recognize, I have to walk in faith that love is still there, even though I'm not feeling it in the time. I just keep going. And eventually it kicks back in. And I've been thinking about that in terms of love. So this divine universe loves us, but then it suddenly stops communicating. Why? That's like, I was saying, but that's like if you're in a relationship with someone and they suddenly give you the silent treatment. Now that feels cruel. And on the receiving end, it does feel cruel. Unless we walk with the idea, no, there's something happening. I don't feel it. I can't sense it, but I have such faith based on this beautiful, loving experience I've been having for all these years. There's something that's being reworked inside of me that I can't see and I can't feel, but I have to walk in faith. So we still show up. We still show up in our practices. We still show up every day in doing our work, as dry as it is, as empty as it is, because that's what we do in relationships. Even when it dries up, we still show up. Again, I liken it to, well, I have two examples. One is if you're raising a child, there's going to be a point where you just have to let the child move away. Sometimes it's all at once, sometimes it's sometimes it's gradually. But if that child is going to find their voice or see things that they might not see in your company, you need to have give them separation. You never stop loving them. And it might be you pulling away or they might be pulling away, but there needs to be some separation for that fullness to come out. And then I think of, in terms of, I thought a great analogy of someone who's in a dark night is City Slickers, that movie with Billy Crystal. And his wife says, you don't smile anymore. You just seem miserable all the time. And she says, go find your smile. She doesn't say, here, let me try to fix it and let's do relationship work. She knew he needed to find it. She needed to step back and let him go on his adventure to find his smile. And then he comes back to the marriage more full, more alive. I know for myself, when I went through the dark night of the soul, which lasted about 2 to 3 years, I remember exactly the moment that light shone up. I still remember it. It was it's like you can't force it. There's nothing I could do. I just kept showing up and doing my practices, and bam, when that light came, I knew it, and it was awesome and extraordinary and beautiful. And what I also knew, if I'd had that same experience 3 years earlier, before the dark night, I would have never seen it. I'd have just gone right past it, considered myself superior to that, and just walked right on by. That the dark night forced me to shut up and say, I don't know, and for a really long time, and I'm trying to figure things out, and what's going on, and it took me a while to realize I was even in the dark night, and then when it showed up, I was so grateful, and I knew that I had needed that time. I didn't know it while I was in it. And so what I've learned from that, again, love matures. We mature in relationship. And there's so many different phases of our relationships. Anyone who's been in relationship with another person or a child or a family, siblings, people at work, there's phases. It's not just, sometimes when we talk about love, we have like this blanket, I love everybody, and it's just so wonderful. And it's so much more than that, because we have to grow up and mature and discover and learn, and what's going on here, and why do I feel so terrible, or why do I feel great, or what's my dreams, what do I want to, where am I in this process, and where am I in relationship to the divine? So for me, the way I look at this relationship with the divine is that's my primary love relationship. That's my primary divine romance. I love Jack and Jack loves me, but we recognize what makes us work is we both recognize God is our primary love relationship. And from that place, we connect with one another. Because the divine is the source of all of us. And so that's a romantic relationship, but you can look at it any way you want. The sense of community, the sense of friendship. I've been listening to a lot of different things about, we get so caught up with love in terms of romance, we forget how profound love is in friendship, in that connecting with one another. And again, friendship has its phases. It's not like, oh, I love my friend all the time. And there's things there's spiritual maturing. And who am I in relationship to this friend? So all of our relationships, every single one of them, strangers, workmates, citizens of the country, of the world, of plants and animals, every relationship is beautiful and vital. But what brings that beauty and vitality is always, first, foremost, and always, our loving, divine relationship with love. I remember having a conversation with my dad, and he was going back and forth early on in his life about whether God existed. And he said, well, I do have one good argument about why God might exist. One good argument, okay. But it was good, I liked it. He said, I was thinking, if God revealed itself completely to us, so there was no doubt, there was no question, how would we ever develop as human beings? We would just be robots, because clearly it knows everything, and we would just go, okay. Like we would have it's the very veil of mystery that allows our souls to develop. It's actually necessary for us, that the veil and that divine union, it's necessary for our development, but the veil is not one to torture us, but to grow us, to develop us. I know there's poets out there, the Walt Whitman Leaves of Grass, and there's always that angel whispering for every blade of grass, grow. That's what this loving energy is, always loving itself as every one of us. I love you. Continue to grow. Find yourself. Heal if you're in the healing stage. Express yourself. Fulfill. Grow. Learn more about who you are as love. To move out into the world, into community as love. And of course, deepen. Let's deepen together in this extraordinary union. Communion of pure, unconditional love. There's nothing more, at least for me, more fulfilling and profound than that two becoming one. But it's always the two as one, and then the we as one. That is deep and profound fulfillment. And that's what I believe a day of love should be celebrating. Let's pray. And so to this beautiful beloved, each and every one of us has this beautiful divine beloved, whatever that form, name, energy looks like for you. And it could be multiple guides, but all working together as one in this beautiful divine harmony of love. And what an extraordinary life we get to live. To be loved and to love with our whole heart, body, mind, and soul. Beloved one, we love you as we know you love us unconditionally and unlimitedly. Even as we are the center of your universe, you are the center of our universe. There's no separation. There's no other. There's just this one beautiful, infinite, oceanic, divine love that carries our heart and our body and our soul into new ways of expressing beyond our wildest imagination. We are never alone, although sometimes we feel lonely. All of it, everything is here whispering through your love, through your attention, through your grace. Grow, love, heal, become, and know we are always and forever one love, in deep abiding peace and everlasting joy, in His holy and sacred communion, we let it be, and so it is. Amen.
I walk in God in all I do. I walk in God in all